Jordan and Zoe sat face to face in a sophisticated restaurant, the soft flicker of a candle dancing between them. The warm, ambient lighting gave their table an intimate glow as they sipped wine, marking 6 years of marriage. To an outsider, they seemed like the picture-perfect couple. Yet tonight, an unspoken tension hovered in the air, thick and palpable. Zoe's gaze rested on Jordan, her eyes probing his face with an unsettling intensity. She swirled her wine delicately before speaking, her voice low and measured. "Jordan," she began, "do you love me?" Caught off guard by her tone, Jordan offered a gentle smile. "Of course I do, Zoe. Why would you even ask that?" Zoe paused, her eyes locking with his. Then, leaning forward slightly, she said, "If you really love me, would you let me be with other men?" The smile froze on Jordan's face, replaced by a look of disbelief. "What are you talking about?" he asked, half laughing as if she were joking. "I mean it," Zoe said nonchalantly, as though discussing redecorating the living room. "Jordan, I feel like I need to explore, to understand myself better." "Understand yourself?" Jordan repeated, his voice tinged with incredulity. "What about us, Zoe? We've been happy together for 6 years. Isn't that enough?" She let out a quiet sigh, her fingers gliding along the rim of her glass. "Yes, we're happy. But don't you think people should experience more? I feel like I'm missing something. Something I've never had the chance to feel." Jordan leaned back, his brows furrowing in shock. "Zoe, this sounds like an excuse to sleep with other men. Be honest. How could this possibly help you?" Crossing her arms, Zoe leaned back in her chair, her expression defiant. "It's not about that," she snapped. "It's about understanding myself before we even think about having kids, for instance." Jordan's features softened slightly as he tried to reason with her. "Zoe, maybe instead of chasing these absurd ideas, we should focus on starting a family now. It's about time, don't you think?" Zoe's laugh was bitter and dismissive, her hand waving away his suggestion like a pesky fly. "Yes, Jordan, children would be wonderful. But how can I raise a family when I don't even know who I am? I've never been with anyone else." Jordan leaned forward, his expression firm as he met her challenging stare. "So, let me get this straight. You'd rather discover yourself through other men than build a future with me?" A faint, teasing smile played on Zoe's lips. "Maybe," she said with a smirk, sipping her wine while her eyes gleamed with mischief. Then, as though testing him, she added, "Tell me, Jordan, have you ever cheated on me? Had a fling on the side?" "Maybe." Jordan blinked, struggling to process the question. "Cheat on you," he repeated, his voice tight with disbelief. "Zoe, I've never even considered it. I've always been loyal. Have I ever given you a reason to doubt me?" Zoe leaned in, a playful smirk tugging at her lips as her finger traced patterns on the tablecloth. "Come on, Jordan. You know men are naturally drawn to polygamy. It's biological, isn't it? I've read about these things. Statistically, men cheat more often. So, what about you?" Jordan frowned, his tone steady as he replied, "Zoe, that's just a convenient excuse for bad behavior. Cheating isn't about biology. It's about integrity. Staying loyal is a choice, one rooted in honesty and respect." She chuckled lightly, resting her chin on her hand. "All right, Mr. Integrity. So how many women were there before me? Be honest." Jordan felt his cheeks flush slightly, but met her gaze. "I've told you about the one girl I dated before you. It didn't work out, and then I met you. Now, here we are, celebrating 6 years of marriage." Zoe raised an eyebrow, her grin widening. "Come on, Jordan. You don't have to be so modest. It's okay if there were more. You can tell me." "I am being honest," Jordan said firmly, irritation creeping into his tone. She waved her hand dismissively. "You're too modest. I think you're just embarrassed to admit there were more." Jordan opened his mouth to protest, but Zoe interrupted, leaning closer. Her tone softened, but her words were sharp. "Jordan, I want to try this, to experience something beyond us. An open marriage. Just for a little while. She studied his face carefully before adding, "You want to try something new too, don't you, Jordan? Even if you won't admit it." The warmth Jordan had felt at the start of the evening had entirely evaporated, replaced by a cold, sinking feeling. "Zoe," he said slowly, his voice trembling with frustration, "the fact that you're even suggesting this tells me something is already broken between us. Don't you see that?" Zoe raised her hand, trying to pacify him. "No, Jordan, listen. Plenty of people say open marriages actually strengthen relationships. They say it gives couples space to appreciate what they have. Don't you want that for us?" Jordan took a deep breath, steadying himself as his hands clenched. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice rising slightly. "How could you possibly believe this would help us?" Her playful smile twisted into a scowl, irritation flashing in her eyes. "See," she snapped, "you're not even trying to understand me. You never do. You pretend to care about my feelings, but the second I say something you don't like, you shut down." Running a hand through his hair, Jordan struggled to keep his voice even. "Zoe, I am listening, but can't you see how absurd this is? A marriage, our marriage, is built on trust and loyalty." She scoffed, her tone turning icy. "And a real husband, a supportive husband, would stand by his wife, even when her ideas are unconventional. But no, you show me down like always." "Come on, Zoe," Jordan exclaimed, his frustration boiling over. "How can you think any of this makes sense? This isn't normal." Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "That's exactly the problem, Jordan. We're stuck in outdated stereotypes, trapped by boundaries created by people too scared to try anything new. Those limits are for weaklings, and I'm not one of them." Leaning forward, her tone turned cutting. Even in the Middle Ages, Jordan, lords and dukes loved their families but still had mistresses. It was perfectly normal. Jordan sighed, shaking his head. "Zoe, that's not even remotely the same. We're not. All I'm asking is for us to try," Zoe said, her voice firm, her eyes shadowed with determination. "To give ourselves a chance to grow, to explore. If you love me, Jordan, you'll let me have this experience with other men. Don't be selfish." At that moment, a waiter walked by, her shocking words hanging in the air like a clap of thunder. The young man froze, his eyes widening as his grip faltered. The tray he was holding crashed to the ground, his face a mix of shock and embarrassment as he hurriedly retreated. Jordan's cheeks burned with humiliation as he noticed a few heads turning in their direction. The previously warm ambience of the restaurant was now heavy, with awkward silence. Leaning forward, his voice dropped to a low murmur. "Zoe, please. Let's keep this between us." She didn't respond, merely folding her arms with a stubborn set to her jaw. Feeling his frustration mount, Jordan reached for the bell. "Let's go home," he muttered, his tone clipped. "We'll talk about this there." Without waiting for a reply, he signaled for the check. They sat in tense silence as the waiter returned, his face carefully blank while presenting the bill. The celebratory atmosphere of the evening had soured completely. The drive home was oppressively silent. Jordan kept his eyes on the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles whitened. Beside him, Zoe stared out the window, her arms crossed defensively. Both were trapped in their own stormy thoughts, the weight of unspoken words pressing down on them. As soon as they stepped into the house, Zoe's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "I thought being honest with you was the right thing to do," she said sharply, spinning to face him. "I didn't want to sneak around or lie. I wanted this out in the open." Her tone softened slightly, but her words were laden with hurt. "But clearly, Jordan, you don't care about my feelings." "Not at all." Jordan dropped his keys on the table, his movements jerky as he turned to face her. "Not care? Zoe, this entire idea is insane. An open marriage? That's not honesty or self-discovery. It's cheating. Plain and simple." Zoe let out a long sigh, shaking her head as if speaking to a child who just didn't understand. "Maybe Mia was right," she muttered under her breath. Jordan's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. Mia, he asked sharply. She knows about this? Yes, Zoe replied defiantly, her chin tilting upward. I talked to her, and she said you'd react exactly like this. She warned me. Jordan laughed bitterly, the sound dripping with sarcasm. Of course Mia would say that. The woman who's never even had a real relationship. If anyone's an authority on marriage, it's her. Zoe's eyes narrowed, her voice cold. Mia gets it. She understands that these old-fashioned ideas about marriage aren't for everyone. Open marriages are progressive, Jordan. They bring out creativity and freedom. It's about experiencing life with fewer constraints. Jordan stared at her, his disbelief mounting. So Mia's been filling your head with this nonsense, he said, his tone dripping with disdain. Has she convinced you that betraying your spouse is just some kind of enlightened therapy? Zoe bristled, her voice rising defensively. Mia didn't put this idea in my head. This was my decision. She's just supportive, Jordan. Unlike you. Supportive? Jordan's voice rose as he lost his patience. Zoe, Mia is out of her depth half the time. Do you seriously want to take life advice from her? Don't you dare insult my best friend, Zoe hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. I've known her longer than I've known you. She's never judged me or made me feel small. She's always been there when things got tough. For a moment, Jordan softened, taking a steadying breath. Does her opinion mean more to you than mine? He asked quietly. Zoe, I'm your husband. Or, does that mean nothing anymore? Her face hardened, her voice frosty. Don't manipulate me, Jordan. This isn't about choosing between you and Mia. His frustration finally boiled over. He slammed his fist onto the table, the sound echoing through the room. Zoe, enough? Is this your grand plan? To turn me into some kind of joke? A cuckold? Zoe's eyes widened, and her lips trembled as tears pooled in her eyes. Her voice wavered, soft and accusatory. You slammed your fist on the table, Jordan. What's next? Are you going to hit me? Jordan recoiled, stunned by the insinuation. What? Zoe, I would never. What the hell are you even saying? I'm frustrated, yes, but I've never laid a hand on you. And I never will. But Zoe had already turned away, her shoulders shaking as she began to sob. She disappeared into the bedroom, leaving Jordan standing frozen in the kitchen. Moments later, he heard the sound of drawers opening and closing. A pang of anxiety struck him. Zoe, he called, stepping toward the door. What are you doing? She emerged with her purse slung over her shoulder, a small bag in her hand. Her eyes were red and puffy, her voice trembling. I can't stay here tonight, Jordan. I need space. I need time to think. You're leaving? He asked, his voice heavy with disbelief. I'm not leaving you, she said softly, adjusting the strap of her bag. I need to be alone. I love you, but tonight you scare me. Zoe, where are you even going at this hour? Jordan asked, his earlier anger giving way to concern. Don't worry, she replied, brushing a tear from her cheek. I'll go to Mia's. Or maybe get a room somewhere. I just need some time. Jordan stood in stunned silence as she walked out, the sound of the door closing reverberating through the quiet house. He sank into a chair, his hands gripping the edge of the table, his thoughts a chaotic storm of anger, regret, and confusion. Jordan felt a pang of guilt gnawing at him. Perhaps he had overreacted, lost his temper when he should have been patient, more understanding. But another thought began to worm its way into his mind, persistent and unsettling. Was Zoe really as shaken as she appeared? Or was this all part of some performance? A tactic to turn the blame onto him? The question swirled relentlessly, hammering at his thoughts until a dull ache throbbed at his temples. The next day was a haze. Jordan moved through his routine like an automaton, the unresolved fight hanging heavy on his mind. Every word from the previous night replayed itself, looping endlessly in his head. When work finally ended, the idea of returning to an empty, silent house filled him with unease. Instead, he decided to take a long walk through the nearby park to clear his mind. As the sun began its slow descent, Jordan found an empty bench overlooking a serene pond. Ducks glided across the water, their playful movements breaking the stillness. The late afternoon light filtered through the trees, casting golden patterns on the ground. He inhaled deeply, the crisp air helping to release some of the day's tension. For the first time in hours, he felt a semblance of calm. After a while, his solitude was gently interrupted by an elderly man strolling down the path. The man paused in front of the bench, his kind face breaking into a polite smile. He appeared to be in his 80s, with silver hair and eyes that radiated a quiet wisdom. "Excuse me, young man," the man said, his voice warm and friendly. "Do you mind if I join you for a while? I hope I'm not intruding, but I admire this view every day." Jordan, surprised by the request, found himself smiling. There was something oddly comforting about the stranger's presence. "Not at all," he replied, gesturing to the spot beside him. "Please have a seat." The old man nodded his thanks and settled beside him, his gaze fixed on the pond with a serene expression. The stark contrast between the man's tranquility and Jordan's inner turmoil was striking, and it stirred a spark of curiosity. After a few moments of silence, Jordan spoke, his voice tentative. "Sir, if you don't mind me asking, how do you manage to look so calm? You seem happy even." The man chuckled softly, a deep, rich sound that seemed to carry decades of life experience. "Well," he began, "the problems I had when I was your age seem so small now. Life is complex, and that's part of its charm. I've learned to see things as they are without clinging to worry. Believe me, there's little use in holding on to anxiety." Jordan nodded, though he struggled to fully grasp the wisdom in the man's words. "You speak beautifully," he said after a pause, "but I think it'll take me a while to see things that way. Could you give me some advice? Something that might help me understand life better?" The old man's smile faded slightly, his eyes sharpening as he turned to Jordan. There was a profound clarity in his gaze, as if he could see straight through to Jordan's soul. "Very well," he said in a serious tone. "Here's what I'll tell you. Don't fall in love with money. It will deceive you. Don't fall in love with women. They will deceive you." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in before continuing. "Of all wines, the most intoxicating is freedom." The man's voice dropped to a near whisper as he leaned in slightly. "And remember this, only a fool is certain. A wise man doubts everything." He finished with a soft laugh, the twinkle returning to his eyes as he turned back to the pond. Jordan sat in silence, the gravity of those words pressing down on him. He took a deep breath, his thoughts stirring in ways they hadn't before. "Thank you," Jordan said quietly as he stood up, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and unease. "I need to get going. Have a good evening." The old man gave him a warm smile and a small wave as Jordan walked away. But as Jordan made his way back to his car, the man's words replayed in his mind, their haunting undertone lingering. Doubts began to bubble to the surface, dark and insistent. Could Zoe have been playing him all along? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. When Jordan arrived home, the emptiness of the house greeted him like an unwelcome guest. Determined to bridge the chasm between them, he reached for his phone and dialed Zoe's number. After a few rings, she answered, her voice soft and tinged with weariness. "Zoe," Jordan began, his tone gentle. "I'm sorry for how I acted last night. I shouldn't have been so harsh." There was a pause before Zoe replied, her voice equally tender. "I appreciate that, Jordan. I shouldn't have sprung the open marriage idea on you like that. It wasn't fair." Hearing her acknowledgement sparked a flicker of hope in Jordan's chest. "I understand," he said softly. "I know things have been hard. Maybe we can work through this together." Zoe sighed, her tone turning wistful. "I need to work through some things on my own first. I've been under more stress than I realized. I've even scheduled some sessions with a psychologist to help me figure things out." "That's a good step," Jordan said, relief washing over him. For the first time in days, their conversation felt open and honest. I'm also planning to take some time off work, Zoe continued. It's been building up for a while, and I think I need some space to clear my head. Good, Jordan replied, the tension in his shoulders easing. Maybe a little space will do us both some good. Zoe agreed, mentioning she would stay with Mia for a few more days and visit her parents at the farm. I love you, Jordan, she said softly, her voice sincere. I want to save our marriage. I just think some time apart will help us reset. Maybe it'll make us miss each other and come back stronger. Jordan felt a swell of optimism. I love you too, Zoe, he said warmly. They said their goodbyes. And as Jordan hung up, a sense of lightness filled him, as though a great weight had been lifted. For the next 20 minutes, he allowed himself to bask in that fragile hope. But the old man's words began to creep back into his thoughts, uninvited and persistent. He walked to the kitchen, pulled out a notepad, and jotted down the phrases that had struck him so deeply. Don't fall in love with money. You'll be deceived. Don't fall in love with women. They'll deceive you. The most intoxicating wine is freedom. As he stared at the words, a chill ran down his spine. A fool is certain of everything. The wise man doubts everything. The words stared back at Jordan from the page. Deceptively simple, but undeniably stirring. His gaze lingered on one phrase. Don't fall in love with women. They'll deceive you. It struck a nerve, gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. What if Zoe wasn't being entirely truthful? What if her talk of needing space and finding herself was just an elaborate excuse to do things she couldn't under his watchful eye? He thought about the newfound freedom she now had. Time spent with Mia, time alone at the farm. Was this really about clearing her head, or had she found a way to live a life without consequences? The seed of doubt planted by the old man's words began to grow, and Jordan felt its weight pressing down on him. His eyes drifted back to another phrase on the page. A fool is certain of everything. The wise man doubts everything. It was like a veil had been lifted. Jordan realized he couldn't take Zoe's reassurances at face value. Despite her promises, something felt deeply off. The old man's words echoed in his mind, urging him to see the situation for what it truly was, not what he wanted it to be. As the thoughts churned, an idea took root. Slowly, it began to solidify. What if he hired a private investigator? If Zoe was genuinely using this time to work through her struggles, he'd finally have peace of mind. But if she was hiding something, he would know the truth. With his heartbeat quickening, Jordan stared at the notepad. He knew what he had to do. The next day, Jordan wasted no time. He contacted a private investigator named Grayson, a sharp and seasoned professional in his late 50s. Grayson listened carefully as Jordan laid out the situation, his doubts, and the drastic changes in Zoe's behavior. The investigator's expression remained calm and composed, as though he'd heard variations of this story countless times before. You're doing the right thing, Grayson said reassuringly. I'll keep a close eye on her and provide you with regular updates. By the time she's ready to return, you'll have the answers you need. Jordan felt a mixture of relief and sorrow wash over him. This wasn't what he wanted, but he knew it was necessary. A quiet voice inside reassured him that he'd done the only thing he could to uncover the truth. Whatever Grayson found, Jordan told himself he would be ready to face it. The following 3 weeks crawled by. Jordan and Zoe spoke often, and to his surprise, their conversations felt light and positive. Zoe seemed to be in a better headspace, telling Jordan about her progress and how she was starting to see the flaws in her earlier ideas. The woman he'd fallen in love with all those years ago seemed to be returning, and Jordan's hope began to flicker once more. Then, one evening, Zoe surprised him during a phone call. Jordan, she said warmly, I've missed you. I think it's time for me to come home. Let's put all of this behind us and start fresh. Don't you agree? Jordan's heart swelled, a smile breaking across his face. Yes, Zoe. I'd love that. Come home. We can start over. They agreed on her return, and in the days leading up to it, Jordan prepared for her arrival. On the evening she was due back, he filled the house with the scent of their favorite meal, set out candles to cast a soft glow over the dining table, and uncorked a bottle of their favorite red wine. When the doorbell finally rang, Jordan opened it to see Zoe standing there. Her smile was warm, her face soft and familiar. She stepped into his arms, and for a moment, all of his doubts melted away. She looked so genuine, so much like the woman he had missed, that he allowed himself to believe everything might be okay. They sat down at the table, the candlelight reflecting the hope in both their eyes. They laughed, shared stories, and reminisced, the evening taking on an air of calm and promise. As the plates emptied and the conversation began to slow, Jordan decided it was time to broach the subject they'd been avoiding. "Zoe," he began carefully, "I can see you're in a better place now. I can see the change in you, and I'm really glad." She nodded, reaching for his hand across the table. "Yes, Jordan, I am. I've thought about so much about us, about myself. It feels so good to be here, to have a fresh start." Her sincerity was palpable, and for a moment, Jordan let himself relax. Then Zoe leaned in, her eyes sparkling with a playful glint. "Jordan," she said softly, "you were right about our marriage needing children. I think it's time we start working on that. Tonight." Jordan chuckled, warmth rising within him despite everything. "Well," he said, "in honor of this evening, I actually have something for you. A gift. Or perhaps two." Zoe's face lit up with excitement. "Jordan, you're amazing," she exclaimed as she eagerly unwrapped the box he handed her. But as she tore through the paper and lifted the lid, her excitement faded. She pulled out two plain folders, her expression shifting to confusion. "What's this?" she asked, glancing up at him. A flicker of worry flashed in her eyes. Jordan leaned back, his expression steady. "Go on, Zoe. Open them. Read." Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the first folder. Her eyes widened as she saw the unmistakable words stamped across the top: "Divorce papers." The color drained from her face as she looked back at Jordan, her voice faltering. What is this?" "Keep reading," Jordan replied evenly. Hesitating, Zoe reached for the second folder and began flipping through its contents. Her face crumbled as the truth unfolded before her eyes. Photo after photo captured her at nightclubs with Mia, her arms wrapped around strangers. There were more, intimate moments with another man at a hotel, and finally, documents from a hospital visit detailing a gynecological examination just days before her return. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. She looked up at Jordan, her voice trembling. "Jordan," he held her gaze, his voice calm but firm. "You've been lying to me, Zoe. While I sat at home, believing you were trying to find yourself, you were out partying with Mia and sleeping with other men." Zoe's words caught in her throat as the weight of the evidence bore down on her. Jordan shook his head slowly, his expression unyielding. "You told me you spent the whole week at your parents' farm, but you were only there for 2 days. The rest?" He gestured at the damning photos in the folder. "The rest of the week you were doing this." Zoe's lips quivered as she began shaking her head vehemently. "Pardon? No. This is all a misunderstanding," she stammered, her voice rising in desperation. "Someone's setting me up? These pictures, they're fake. None of this is real. You have to believe me." Jordan let out a bitter laugh, his eyes hard as he leaned forward, his tone chillingly calm. "You know, there's one thing I can't quite figure out, Zoe." He paused, watching her squirm under his gaze. "Why didn't you enjoy all that freedom you fought so hard for? Or wait," his voice dropped, each word cutting like ice. "I think I know. Maybe it's because those men you were with didn't want what I gave you, commitment, stability. They didn't even want you. Just a few good nights, and nothing more." Tears spilled down Zoe's cheeks as she clutched the folder tightly to her chest. "Jordan, please," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "None of this is true. You have to believe me. You're my husband. This isn't what it looks like. But Jordan stood, his movements slow and deliberate, as he gathered his keys from the table. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried a finality that made her tremble. I've seen enough, Zoe. Enjoy your freedom. He gave her a small, cold smile, devoid of warmth. I'll see you in court. Without another glance, he turned and walked out the door. Zoe's desperate cries followed him into the night, but Jordan didn't stop. As he climbed into his car, a strange sense of relief washed over him. For the first time in months, the crushing weight of suspicion was gone, replaced by clarity. He drove to a quiet motel where he finally allowed his mind to rest. The air around him felt clearer than it had in years. The divorce trial stretched over the next month, each session peeling away the flimsy layers of Zoe's defense. She vehemently claimed the photos and videos Jordan presented were fabrications, a cruel setup to humiliate her. But as experts examined the evidence, the truth became undeniable. The photos were real, the videos were real, and Zoe's lies crumbled under their weight. By the end, even Zoe's defiance couldn't sway the court. The divorce was finalized. Zoe left the courtroom looking hollow and broken, her once vibrant spirit dimmed to a faint shadow. But Mia, ever the firebrand, was by her side, her voice sharp with bitterness. Who cares about him, Zoe? To hell with your paranoid ex. You deserve so much better, Mia said loudly, her words echoing through the courthouse hallway. Her voice caught Jordan's attention as he exited the building. Mia turned to him, her eyes blazing with fury. Weakling. Paranoid. Are you ashamed of humiliating Zoe like this? You're just another smug little man. For a moment, Jordan considered responding, but he quickly realized it was pointless. Mia wasn't worth the energy. Instead, he met her angry glare with a calm expression and shrugged. I wish you happiness, he said simply. Good luck. Without waiting for her reply, he walked away, the cool autumn air filling his lungs. A sense of closure settled over him, and for the first time in a long while his steps felt light. In the weeks that followed, Jordan returned to the park several times, hoping to find the elderly man who had spoken with him on the bench. Each time, he searched the same spot near the pond, hoping to see the serene figure gazing out over the water. But the man was nowhere to be found. Curious, Jordan approached other park visitors, describing the old man in detail. But no one recognized him. No one had seen anyone matching that description. One afternoon, Jordan sat on the same bench, staring out at the pond as ducks glided lazily across the surface. The mystery of the old man lingered in his thoughts. Had he been real? Or had he been something else entirely? A messenger, perhaps, or a creation of Jordan's own subconscious? A manifestation of wisdom at a moment when he needed it most? Whatever the answer, Jordan felt a peace he hadn't known before. The doubts that once consumed him were gone, and his heart felt calm. For the first time, he could see life as it was, free from illusion or denial. With a quiet smile, he stood, leaving the park and the bench behind. A new chapter awaited him, one filled with clarity and freedom.